Boy, oh boy. Volkswagen, Stellantis, they're two of the companies that are going to be massively penalized over the next 10 years. In fact, if you think about this, they're going to lose billions of dollars as a result of these latest rules and regulations, which the European Union say will save hundreds of thousands of lives. However, Stellantis, the CEO, he is angry, he is bitter, he is furious that, people want clean cars. He thinks it's a disgrace. And frankly, they shouldn't have to pay for it. You should. You should be paying for this with your health and with your life. Well, that's what he thinks anyway. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking. Great to see you. Welcome to all the new subscribers and welcome back everyone else. Great to have you back here. Thank you to our Patreon supporters and also to our YouTube members. So, what is going on here? Well, first of all, I made a video not long ago saying that this year Tesla would make around $2 billion from doing nothing. I mean, literally just signing some documents. That's all they have to do. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about when car companies in China sell their cars and when they sell them in Europe, they have to pay for either tax credits or they have to pay for either clean energy credits or they have to pay fines to the European Union. So they can pay for Tesla's credits because Tesla only makes EVs and then they avoid the fines. So that's a good way of avoiding fines. And obviously Tesla will charge a bit less than what the fines will cost, make some money. That's what they've been doing for years. Now, the mainstream media has been saying, no, this is going to come to an end. You know what the mainstream media was saying? 2019, it's finished. End of 2019, all the legacy automakers, they're going to smash Tesla. There's going to be no more credits for Tesla to make. You know what? You know how much money Tesla's making? They're making more than ever. More than ever. And all these clowns in the media that people listen to. I can't believe people listen to them. You guys send me emails. You're like, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen this article? So-and-so says this. I'm like, come on. That guy's a muppet. Don't listen to those clowns. Come on. If you want the truth, I'll give you as much factual information as you can possibly handle. 6 videos per day. And I'll throw the facts right at you, right in your face. I know some of you don't like this. I understand that. Totally understand that. But here, I'm going to tell it how it is. And how it is this. Volkswagen and Stellantis, they are two of the biggest, well, basically the two biggest vehicle sellers in Europe. And guess what? They are polluting the hell out of Europe. That's the truth. They are. Whether you like that or not, it doesn't really matter because the reality is these companies, they don't care. They care about one thing. And that's fair enough. They care about making money. And that's why they fought tooth and nail. They fought pretty much to the death to try and get the European Union to scrap Euro 7 regulations. But they lost. It's official. Within the last 24 hours, word has come out. The regulations will be put in place and they're actually pretty tough. They're tough to the point where companies such as trucking and bus companies, they are going to have to completely change the products they sell. It's going to happen really quickly, otherwise they won't comply. Basically, the European Union is saying 70% emission reduction has to happen within the next 5 years. That's for trucks and buses, but for the passenger vehicle market, they're saying it's going to happen by 2025, and after that, too bad, so sad. So maybe these analysts that are saying, Volkswagen's going to make this much money, Stellantis is going to make this much money, they need to consider these new regulations. And if they don't, if you're going to read their information they're going to give you and they don't consider this, and you can clearly see they're not, you need to consider whether or not you take their words seriously, whether or not you think they've really done their research. Because remember, these are the same analysts that were telling you guys that there would be no EV credits, there would be no emissions credits, Tesla would be making nothing. Guess what? If anything, this is going to increase. You know why this is going to increase? Because realistically, best case scenario, these companies will be making 20%, 25% of their product in 2025 will be electric. That still means 70 to 80% of the cars they sell are going to be polluting. They're going to be not meeting these targets. They can't. They're not going to be able to meet these targets unless they lie. Guess what happened last day? At the time they lied. They had to pay $60 billion. It was a fiasco for Volkswagen I'm talking about. Well, Stellantis had to go through this as well to some degree, but obviously not to the same length of Volkswagen. But the only way they're going to be able to meet these targets, the only possible way, is if they lie and put emissions cheating devices on. And I think that game is up. I think we've all realized what's going on, so they don't have a choice. That means one thing. Companies like Tesla will continue to make billions of dollars in profits, at least for the next 3 years. You can book that as part of their future. Now, after repeated delays, the European Commission this month released its proposed Euro 7 pollution rules, succeeding Euro 6, which came into force back in 2014. These much tighter vehicle emission rules create new realities for automakers across the multinational market. Guess what? Lower profits. Because the only possible way they can meet these new emissions rules is if they spend basically hundreds of millions of dollars in new technology which doesn't exist yet, which is going to be basically a miracle, or they pay fines, or they pay credits to other companies. That's the only possible way they can do it. Or they just stop selling gasoline and diesel powered vehicles. And do you think that's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? I don't think so. What, 6% of Volkswagen's cars right now are electric? Stellantis, what is it? About the same? So they've got a long way to go. It's going to be tough. Euro 7 will be the final internal combustion engine regulations enacted in Europe before the ban in 2035. Automakers had fought against these new rules, says the automaker-friendly Automotive News. Now, Automotive News, they actually get paid. They get money from dealerships, from car brands. So these guys are pretty objective in their opinions. They're saying automakers fought against the rules, arguing that money spent on new compliance measures could better be invested in lowering the cost of electrification. Interesting argument. Now, they could have started doing this years ago, electrifying, but they chose not to. They argue that there will be little need for new rules because the proportion of internal combustion engine sales will continue to fall ahead of the 2035 zero emissions deadline. Now, if you actually do a statistical modeling of what they're arguing, it doesn't make any sense. It's complete nonsense. It's so ridiculous. It's like, hey, let's just continue to smoke cigarettes in other people's faces because don't worry, in 2035, hopefully they'll still be alive and, it won't matter, right? By then, right? Yeah, by then it won't matter, right? That's basically what they're saying. But the reality is that in 2035, they won't be banning gasoline-powered cars that are already on the roads. These cars are going to be on the roads. You're going to have to wait another 15 years, 20 years before those cars aren't on the roads. Now, yes, in some cities they're banning gasoline-powered cars, but mostly they can't ban those vehicles in 2035. They can only ban the sale of new ones. So whatever gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles we sell now will continue to pollute for decades to come. So this argument is utterly ridiculous. Fortunately, the European Union, in spite of intense lobbying, was able to ignore that. I'm really quite shocked that they were able to do that because there would have been some serious lobbying efforts going on from BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen Group, Audi, all these brands that are set up in Europe. These brands are in Europe. They would have been lobbying Europe, the European Union Commission big time. Now, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares recently called Euro 7 a diversion from the major goal of electrification. Now, he's obviously also criticized electrification entirely. In fact, he thinks it's not possible because it'll double the price of cars, create social disunity and fights and anger and major social economic problems and all kinds of things. And all of a sudden he's saying, but this diverts us from the goal of electrification. Now, Carlos, my friend, you cannot have your cake and eat it. Which is it? Which one is it, mate? You got to go with one or the other. You can't have both. Now, the recent surge in inflation, especially in vehicle prices in Europe, has added to their argument. They're just saying, well, this will just make cars too expensive for people. Well, you know what it'll do? It'll mean that your competition goes, thank you very much. We'll price our cars lower than you because you're saying that you can't sell them at a profit, even though Stellantis right now, as in today, are making record profits right now, selling gas cars. Record profits. Maybe this inflation thing is made up. Sure, it's affecting them to some degree, but at the same time, why are they making record profits when inflation is such a big problem? I'm not buying it. So the standards show a clear difference. They're much harsher than Euro 6 standards. Notably, they've unified standards for diesel and gasoline vehicles on pollutants such as nitrogen oxides, toughening targets for trucks and buses, and setting limits on brake dust and tire particles. It's going to be interesting here with brake dust and tire particles because you know what it's going to do? New market here. New market for brakes, brake pads in particular that wear less. But remember, EVs use their brakes way less. On average, electric cars use their brakes 5 times slower, the brake pads, 5 times slower than gasoline-powered cars. Because most people driving an EV, they generally use regen braking, which doesn't use your brake pads. So that's one of the great things, because brake dust is really, really bad for you. People don't realize this. You're breathing it in. Walk through a city. This is why I recommend that people don't live in a city. It's a nightmare. You're putting so many pollutants into yourself. You are. It's actually really bad. I'm not one of these freaks who are like, don't do this. Everything's bad for you. That's not me. But I'm going to tell you, I've been walking through the city, just the city, Launceston. It's not a big city. But you can literally smell the diesel. You can smell the brake pad dust. You can actually taste it in your mouth. If you're living in a city like that, well, get these numbers. The European Union says that long-time exposure to pollution from fine particulate matter, including brake dust, tire dust, and more importantly, NOx, caused from, of course, diesel and gasoline, specifically caused as a result of road traffic, causes 70,000 premature deaths every single year in the European Union alone, with 300,000 deaths from air pollution every single year. That's just in Europe. Not even in the whole of Europe, just in the European Union. 300,000 deaths. That's a lot of people, right? So if your immune system is fighting something, let's say you've got a cold, let's say you got COVID or you got the flu or something like that, you're fighting that. And then you're walking around breathing all this stuff in, well, then your immune system has to fight something else. That's when things like cancer can happen. They say that road transport accounted for 39% of harmful NOx emissions in 2014, but that number has increased since then. So who's going to win out of this scenario? Car brands are moaning. They're saying they're going to lose. It's terrible. The world's coming to an end. Of course, their massive profits might be coming to an end, and their ability to just continue polluting the world hopefully is coming to an end. But there are some winners. One of those, of course, is humans. City dwellers in particular. People in Europe, there's a lot of people who don't actually own cars at all. And those people are affected significantly because they're traveling outside in the open air. They're not even inside a car, so it's worse for them. Basically, they're not doing the polluting, but the polluting is being done to them. It's kind of brutal when you think about it like that. If road transport accounts for 47% of NOx emissions in urban zones, then of course, limiting those pollutants will save thousands of lives. The EU says that in 2035, Euro 7 regulations will cut passenger car and van NOx emissions by 35%, and those by buses and trucks by 56%. Brake particulates should be cut by 27%. A report from Morgan Stanley found that Europe's biggest automaker, Volkswagen Group, will face more than 400 million in compliance costs alone on car sales. Now, that's just compliance cost in terms of getting the software to try and manufacture their cars to be able to meet these new targets. Now, that's just a number that they've thrown up. I'm not really sure if they know that's the correct number, but that's what they're saying. Number two, Stellantis will be hit with approximately around a $400 million bill as well. But of course, they're going to have to pay massive regulations fees to companies like Tesla in order to not be fined. The regulations will also apply to higher and lower temperatures or a bigger thermal window. This will further impact sales of small cars in Europe, which are disproportionately affected by any manufacturing cost increase. Most European automakers already have abandoned the mini car segment, saying it's too expensive to add more equipment to these cars, either to reduce tailpipe pollutions or emissions or to hybridize small engines. So what's happening right now is all these automakers in China are going, so you guys are abandoning this segment because you're saying it's too hard, because your polluting cars can't be made not to pollute at an affordable price. Therefore, we'll just sell our affordable electric cars, our affordable small electric cars in Europe. We'll just take that market from you. Thanks very much. That's basically what's about to happen. Massive disruption. And frankly, that's because these guys are being too lazy to do what? To innovate and to compete, to make compelling EVs at a price point where people can afford them. Ultimately, I view this as a win. I'm stoked this has happened. I read this article on a couple of sites, saw what happened, and I went, yes, that's great. Thank you, European Union. I'm stoked to hear this result. Now, let me hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, my friends. Bye-bye.